Greetings, students, and welcome to this special domestic edition of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. This is where we come as a community in order to discuss more. Hopefully, this will inspire you to travel more and ultimately to enjoy life more. Now, you can reach me on a variety of different locations, including my website, which is at theprofessortravel.com. If you are on YouTube, on Facebook, and if you're on TikTok, you can find me there at The Professor Travel. If you're an Instagrammer, you can find me there at the_professor_travel. If you're a Twitter, you can find me on Twitter at the Professor TR1. And then finally, if you're a blogger, you can find me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, my visiting professor comes to us from the great state of Illinois, Dave Longwell. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Scott.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know we've been trying to get together for a while, and I really appreciate your time. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So for the benefit of my students, can you maybe provide us with a little background, either maybe something in your educational credentials or something in your travel that you've done?
Sure. So in terms of my Illinois credentials, I have lived here since I was about 3 years old, grew up in the Chicago suburbs, a town called Batavia, Illinois, which is due west of Chicago, about 50 miles. So I think we're probably about the last suburb west that you can still call a suburb before it gets pretty rural. If anyone's seen the movie Wayne's World, that takes place in Aurora, Illinois. That is just the town directly south of where I grew up and the town where my high school was. So really puts us on the map out there. I went to University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, the state's flagship school, which is in central Illinois, so about 3 hours south of Chicago. And I've lived in Chicago for most of my adult life. So happy, proud Illinoisan. I have traveled internationally a bit, South America, Europe a couple of times. I was actually born in South Africa. I don't really remember it though. I was a baby.
Were you? Wow.
Yeah, it was, but I don't know if it counts as having traveled because I don't remember a thing. Cool pictures though from when I was an infant. And then I've been around the United States. Haven't been to every state or landmark like I'd like to, but yeah, traveled a bit.
Just on a side note, internationally speaking, what has been your favorite country to visit that you've been to
Oh
outside
man.
the U.S.?
Yeah, it depends on when you ask me. It's usually the one that I've most recently traveled to.
Okay.
But let's see, Colombia was amazing. I was there in 2018, and we went to Bogota, Medellin, and then Cartagena, and really just it was just an amazing, beautiful culture, beautiful landscapes. Paris, my fiance and I pictured here, the beautiful Isabel. We traveled there in spring of 2019. It was just amazing. Just yeah, I mean, as cliche as it is, I thought Paris might be so cliche that it was going to be too kitschy for me, but no, it was just perfect. Paris is delightful.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations again. You have a lovely fiance, sir.
Thank you.
So, as we made mention, the topic of this specific vlog and podcast will be the state of Illinois. So, in getting into that conversation, I'm going to fully disclose to you, Dave, I have very little knowledge of the state, except for, of course, having gone to Chicago once, but again, not really knowing the history of it. So based upon your knowledge of Chicago, or not just Chicago, but all of the state of Illinois, talk to us a little bit about what your knowledge is. Share with us a little bit about what you know about the history of Illinois.
Yeah, I'm glad you're not too familiar because it gives me job security as a traveling professor. So Illinois is not, for anyone unfamiliar with, the start of the United States or somewhat familiar. We're not one of the original 13 colonies. We were founded quite a bit later. So it began as there were French outposts and French missions in this territory. It was mainly Indian territory. That's throughout Illinois. It was the first settlement that became Chicago. So there were French outposts, but the first Chicago roots were traced back to a man named Jean-Baptiste du Sable, and that was in the 1600s, late maybe 1700s. I apologize, I don't have the exact date off the top of my head. And that name is actually very relevant in Chicago right now because the famous Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, they're considering renaming it to Jean-Baptiste du Sable Drive.
Oh, wow.
And it's been a little bit contentious, I think, just because people fear change. But a lot of people say, he definitely deserved it. And I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. He was French. It's probably Jean-Baptiste Dussable, something like that. But forgive me if on my lack of French.
That's okay.
That became Chicago. So that's his claim to fame. The state officially became the state in 1818. Our big one that we hang our hat on is Abraham Lincoln. This is his home state. He wasn't from here. He was from Kentucky. He was born in Kentucky, but he spent most of his life in Illinois. This is where he practiced law down around Springfield. We are called the Land of Lincoln, along with the Prairie State, but Land of Lincoln is really what we hang our hat on. There's a small college outside of Springfield called Illinois College, and there, I think it's an unofficial claim to fame, is that this is a little silly. If Abraham Lincoln were to have gone to college, that's where he would have gone to college.
Okay.
So you can have some fun with that. I'm actually not sure how kind of tongue-in-cheek that is, but I do know that they say that. Let's see. It quickly Illinois became a hub, particularly Chicago became a hub of commerce because everyone realized there's good land here, great soil. That's kind of one of our big things. Great soil. We're still a heavy agricultural state. All 4 seasons, but generally very livable and central. We have the Great Lakes right here. Chicago abuts Lake Michigan, and then as soon as the Illinois and Michigan Canal was built, that connected us to the Mississippi River, and we could transport goods across the country. Let's see. Fast forward a bit. If you live in Chicago or you visit Chicago and you take any history class or architecture tour, you're going to hear about the Great Chicago Fire that happened in 1871. And the legend is that a woman named Mrs. O'Leary left her lantern in the barn and her cow kicked it over and that started the fire. That's actually not true. I think they've disproven that. Probably too late to save Mrs. O'Leary's reputation. But one of the biggest issues with the fire, the biggest causes of the fire, was that most of the city was built out of wood. The buildings, the sidewalks were built out of wood.
Oh, wow.
Which seems short-sighted. But ever since then, obviously, it changed the building code for a lot of places, not just Chicago. But it really destroyed most of the downtown area. And ever since then, you can't have primarily wood construction.
I don't blame them.
Yeah. So that was a big one. Let's see. I can go kind of into recent history if you want me to.
Well, also, what about
Sure.
the one thing I do remember from doing my knowledge of or just going through history classes and things like that in general, we're always made aware of prohibition and
Oh yeah.
what happened during the 1920s. But there was a really big series of mobsters that were famous in the Chicago area as well. And are you familiar with that at all? Or
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're from Chicago or the Chicago area, it's kind of it's one of those odd sources of pride where even though it's a seedy, I guess a stain on our history, but really it's so cool and everybody loves it. So Al Capone was based here. He was active in Chicago. Kind of his home base was Cicero, which is kind of a very close southwest suburb. But yeah, he ran the South Side. And we were very active in Prohibition. We had a lot of there's the North Side gang and then the Capone gang. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre is when a member of Capone's gang, I think his name was Machine Gun Jack, shot down about, what was it, like 14. Maybe I'm just saying that because of Valentine's Day. It was maybe like 7 or 8 members of the North Side gang, kind of close to Wrigley Field, I believe, Wrigleyville. Anyway, a lot of violence during that time, a lot of speakeasies, a lot of prohibition. That also kind of originated. Chicago has a bit of a corrupt reputation, and if anyone from Chicago is listening, don't take offense. I love my city. I live here. This is where I'm speaking from right now. But we are considered, from a government standpoint, and have been up until recent years, one of the more corrupt cities, major cities, I think, in the world, not just the country.
I do remember hearing about Blagojevich,
Blagojevich, Ryan. We had 2 governors in a row go to prison. Alderman Burke was the most recent. And there's things with aldermen that sneak up. They're just a little sketchy. But Alderman Burke was recently indicted by the FBI. This seems so old school. I can't believe it still happens. But he went to some land developers and basically said, you're not going to get your licenses that you need unless you hire my law firm to do this work that kind of doesn't really need to be done. And yeah, I mean, it was just a straight up bribe,
That's
real old
terrible.
school. Obviously, he got caught for it. I say obviously. You wonder how much of that happens where they don't get caught. But anyway, that kind of little level of corruption can be traced back to the Al Capone days.
Craziness. And then, of course, you
We're working on it.
for many, yeah, well, for many years, I know you guys had the largest building in the world there. That
Yeah,
it overtook the Empire State Building for a while. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what might be in your
it
area?
did. So the Sears Tower, yes, it overtook the Empire State Building. I think it wasn't too long that it was the largest in the world, but it was for a time. And then you know other countries built some that were larger, but it was the tallest in the United States for quite a while, up until what was it 2012, I believe, or 2013 was when One World Trade Center was built in New York.
Yeah.
That was taller than the Sears Tower, so that overtook that. Around the same time, I should have this exact date, but it became the Willis Tower. So the naming rights were changed. The reason I don't really know the date is because everyone in Chicago still calls it the Sears Tower. But it is technically the Willis Tower. We probably shouldn't have such name pride for the Sears Tower. I mean, it was originally named. It was still corporate sponsorship, right? It was the Sears Holdings, so it's not like it was named after some some local kid. But well, Sears is a local company. But anyway, yeah, it's still a source of pride. It's still a beautiful landmark on our skyline. So
Is
come
Sears a
see it.
local company for you guys?
It's an Illinois company, yeah. Sears Holdings.
I did not know that. So that's
Yeah,
again another piece of information I'm taking away from this. So thank you so much.
yeah. I'm jumping ahead to businesses around here, but yeah.
Yeah. But there's also, I mean, besides Abraham Lincoln, there was another president that I think was from your state, not born in your state, but I think
We
came
we
up
have
from,
a few of them
yeah.
actually. So uh, Abraham Lincoln,
Mhm.
Ulysses S. Grant is from Illinois. I'm trying to think if Johnson was. I think he
Well,
might have. I think he's an Illinois.
I know there's a very recent president
Well,
that,
Barack Obama is from the South Side.
there you go.
So yeah,
There's
in
another there.
chronological order. Yeah, Barack Obama's a proud South Sider. He and Michelle both grew up both grew up in Chicago, and he went to the University of Chicago. His presidential library is being planned on the South Side right now.
Oh, cool.
Before him, Ronald Reagan was born in Decatur, I believe, which is in central Illinois. He spent most of his time in California, but yeah, we have a few presidents that have their ties in Illinois.
Very cool. Anything else that you think we might need to know about in terms of history?
Yes, I have a couple of fun facts. So first of all, inventions that come from the state of Illinois that you need to know that we get credit for them. The TV remote, the dishwasher, the
Okay.
fly swatter, the
Fly
zipper,
swatter.
the pinball machine, barbed wire, the Ferris wheel, and the mobile phone. And I'm sure there are more, but those are my favorite.
That's awesome.
Yes. Also, for any Superman fans,
Mhm.
so Superman's from the city of Metropolis.
Yes.
There is a Metropolis, Illinois. And in 1972, DC Comics declared that Superman was from Metropolis, Illinois. That is the home of Superman. They have a Superman statue there if you go and visit.
Fantastic. Awesome stuff. Thank you for sharing all that. That's really cool. I'm a huge comic book fan, so that really does help out a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the geography of your area. For those that are maybe outside the United States, they may not know where Illinois sits in terms of what surrounds your area. Can you maybe share some of the states that are surrounding and where they're
Sure.
located?
Yeah. So we're smack. We're the heart of the Midwest, and yeah, for those who are unfamiliar with the layout of the United States, there's the East Coast, and then there's the West Coast, and they're the Western states. So we're kind of the Midwest. If you look on a map, we're not like smack dab in the middle, Midwest. You get it? So Chicago's kind of like the heartland, like hub, the central major city of the Midwest. Around us to the north so we've got Lake Michigan borders Chicago, and then directly to our north is Wisconsin. To our east, we've got Indiana, and then the southeast and the south is Kentucky, which is not a major chunk, but on the southern tip of Illinois. And then Missouri to the southwest, and Iowa directly west.
Do you ever have people from outside the state that sometimes get Indiana and Illinois confused with each other, or is that just like
I
so?
bet that happens outside of the Midwest. Around here, you would never dare to get the two confused. The one thing that gets confusing is Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa. The universities all call them U of I, or actually
Mm,
Indiana is IU. But when you talk to people outside of the Midwest, again, that gets confusing. Iowa and University of Illinois are both U of I, so you've got to kind of clarify depending on where you are.
wonderful. Thank you. Now let's talk about weather, because that is one thing that anybody who goes to Chicago, visits Chicago, or lives in Chicago needs to be very, very on point with. I could just tell you, and I think I alluded to it when I was speaking with you off air, that the one trip I did take to Chicago, like one day I was staying in a high rise and there were like winds that you could literally tell were knocking on the building so hard. It was like, it felt like the building was going to fall. The next day it was huge and humid. It was just kind of this gross feeling.
Yeah.
And then the next day it was freezing. So I was like, I don't really know what to expect from weather in Illinois. Like, talk to me. What do you expect when you think about Illinois weather?
Yeah, we've got. You can find things online where people say, "Oh, we have like 8 seasons." You know, there's winter, and then there's fake spring, and then there's second winter, and and then there's like 1 week of real spring. So we were wearing shorts last weekend, and it was beautiful, and it was summer, and now it's like 45 degrees. I feel like we do have 4 seasons, but they're really fickle. Every year, I think in like March, sometimes even into April, it snows, and everyone in Chicago is like, I can't believe it's snowing this late in the season. It's like we forget every year that that's what happens every year. And it can snow a lot. If you're coming here in the fall through the spring, you need to bring a coat. And if you're from a warm weather climate, make sure you have the right coat. You need to bundle up. This year we had a record amount of snowfall. Lots of snow. It can get very cold and it can get very hot in the summer. So yeah, we've got all 4 good major seasons. One thing to note, so you'll hear us called the Windy City. That name has nothing to do with the weather. I'm sure it gets windy here, but I probably no more than any other major city that's on a waterfront. The name comes from the 1800s when a newspaper reporter referred to the politicians in Chicago as being full of hot air. Ever since then, it was called the Windy City.
Again, we get into the corruption portion of this, but again, politicians, whatever. We could talk
We're
about it.
good people. We're not corrupt. Yes.
No. Now, in terms of extreme climates, are there any do you guys like are there risks of tornadoes? Are there risks of any major hurricanes, blizzards, things like that ever occur within your area?
Not really. So I mean, we've had tornado warnings. I remember, having to, go into the basement when we were kids, but not really. Especially this far north, this close to Chicago, it's probably more of a risk in Central Illinois, but nothing like Tornado Alley, Oklahoma in that area. So that's not a major concern for us. It's more so the cold and the snow. There are always warnings. There's always concerns about the elderly during a severe winter. There are always concerns about people who are homeless in Chicago, and efforts that are taken to protect them during the blizzards or the severe cold. So that's the big one.
Excellent. Now let's talk a little bit about culture, because we have so many different varieties and types of culture that you have within your area, starting of course with religion. When I was doing research, it seemed like the predominant religion was the Catholic faith that was most throughout Illinois.
Yeah.
Are you in agreement with that, or?
Yeah, if you had to pick one that's predominant, yes, and whether or not that's practicing, but if they were raised and identify as Catholic, yeah, I think it's about 30, like 28% or something well, I think it's about 70% Christian,
Okay.
and I think it's about 30% of those are declare themselves Catholic, which is like the largest, and then maybe about 20% non-religious and about 6 to 7% other, Islam, Judaism, etc. So, yeah, predominantly Christian.
Okay, cool. And then in terms of the arts, when I think of the arts, of course, I think of everything from the fine arts to writing, acting, painting,
Yeah.
dancing, things like that. Some famous people that obviously have come from your area: Betty White, Harrison Ford, Ludacris, Bill Murray, John Malkovich, Susie Orman, the Arquettes. I mean, there's so many different people. Who might I be leaving out that you'd be like, oh, I can't believe Scott didn't bring that up?
Yeah, see, you got to talk about blues and jazz if you're talking about Chicago. It's kind of considered the birthplace of the blues. Chicago blues is very famous. I heard an interview with Buddy Guy, who's a famous blues artist, musician. He's got restaurants and bars here in Chicago. He said that, technically it's Southern blues. They came here in the 1900s because this is where the music scene was, is where the producers were. but that transition made Chicago kind of the home of the blues. Also, in terms of art, our architecture, if you come to Chicago, you should take the architecture tour. We're famous for it worldwide. It's one of the proudest architecture cities in the world. Beyond that, let's see. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra is world renowned. They're also very good. In terms of other like mainstream actors, actors that you might know of, if you're a Parks and Rec fan, Nick Offerman, who played, he's from Moline. It's kind of a central Illinois city. I'm not remembering exactly where he is, but he's from Illinois. Let's see, Ludacris, Lupe Fiasco, Kanye West is from Chicago. The Cusacks, John and Joan Cusack, they still live here, to my knowledge. So yeah, we've got a good amount. Second City is a very famous comedy club.
The comedy, yeah.
The amount of people that came out of Second City and went straight into Saturday Night Live, and became big off of that. I mean, especially in like the golden era of Saturday Night Live, 70s, 80s. Chris Farley, John Belushi, the Belushis are from Chicago. We're big on comedy, big on blues.
Excellent. In terms of language in the state, it's primarily English, but you do have a very large Polish population as well, correct?
We do, yeah. There are different statistics that are thrown around. The one that I always hear is that Chicago is the largest concentration of Polish people outside of Warsaw, which is the capital of Poland. I think there's some, I don't know if that's entirely true, but I think of Polish descent is correct. So outside of Warsaw, the largest concentration of people of Polish descent is the Chicago metropolitan area. There was beyond like we all think of the immigration to the United States being, in the earlier 1900s and before that, there was a major migration of Polish people from, there was just issues going on with the authoritarian government and whatnot in the 80s, so fairly recently. So there is a large Polish population here. My neighborhood is very Polish. I have a couple elderly neighbors that I talk to, and they try to communicate with me what they're thinking, what they're trying to say without really any English. It's all Polish. So the fact that they've been here for as long as they have and have been able to function in a community just speaking Polish shows you how ingrained that is.
Awesome. And then of course my favorite subject in the whole world, diet and food. Oh my gosh. Two icons out of your state, the Chicago dog, obviously, it's legendary. And then of course the Chicago pizza style.
We're not big on diets, but we're big on food. Hey-o. No, those two are staples. You can also throw in there Italian beef. Those three are really kind of the quintessential Chicago foods. One thing that surprises people when I get out of Chicago, we don't eat deep dish all the time. If we did, we'd be a much fatter city than we are. I think people think that if we're eating pizza in Chicago, we're eating deep dish. That's not true. It's kind of a special occasion thing. Really, I only eat deep dish pizza when I have friends visiting from out of town. I love it, but it's a pie. It is a massive like cake of pizza.
Yeah.
So it's really a commitment.
I'm gonna blow up my own channel now and saying that it is actually my favorite type of pizza. I actually will get it when I can. There's only a couple places around here, but it's not real Chicago pizza, but it's deep dish. Mm-hmm. And then of course, when I travel through, like I went through Chicago via LA to Miami, and I picked up a pie while I was there, and it was just nice, it was so happy. Yeah. It just beams me.
There's you'll hear these arguments. There's several years back there was like a debate between our previous mayor Rahm Emanuel made some comment about us having the best pizza, and then Jon Stewart, when he was still on his show, there was some debate there. I think between arguing Chicago pizza versus New York pizza is like comparing apples and donkeys. It's just they're two entirely different beasts. But yeah, I agree. It's my favorite pizza.
I think we should all be friends and just have one slice of each at the table all the time, and that's fine. Then we won't get all angry about it. So, but let's talk about sports in your town, in your state. You got some amazing teams over there.
We do. We have some historic teams. So the Bears, the '85 Bears is one of the most storied NFL teams of all time. If you haven't heard of them, you're unfamiliar with them, there are documentaries on them. It's just an amazing story. The Super Bowl Shuffle.
Yeah.
The Chicago sports guys from Saturday Night Live, if you remember them. That was during that era. There'd be, the Bears, the Bulls. You got to YouTube it if you haven't seen it. The 90s era Bulls, obviously Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman leading the charge. If you've seen that Netflix documentary, The Last Dance, most recently. Was that Netflix? Yeah, it
I
was
think it
Netflix.
was.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that was great. That showed you the last season of that era Bulls, that dynasty. More in my adult life, the late aughts into the teens, the Blackhawks had their major dynasty with Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane leading the way there, and Corey Crawford, who people used to say I look like, but I think I'm losing as I get older. But let's see, the Sox won in 2005. They've got a good team again this year, but we'll
I can't
see.
forget about the Cubs either.
That was the Cubs, of course, won the World Series in 2016 after 100 years. So that was huge. That was amazing. And Cubs games are still just incredible to go to. The Wrigleyville is really built up in the last 5 to 10 years. It's not as neighborhoody as it once was, but it's a very unique experience.
Is Wrigley Stadium named for the Wrigley family that produced the gum?
Yes, the gum. Yeah, the candy company. It's the same family, but they split forever ago. So they've been unrelated for probably 100 years.
and again, same with the situation with the Sears Tower. So I mean, it's like they still call it talk about corporate sponsorship. Then finally, does your state have any state-specific holidays or holidays that are celebrated that are not under the normal mainstream of holidays?
Yeah, the one that I can think of is Kazimierz Pulaski Day.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Kazimierz Pulaski?
I have not heard of Kazimierz Pulaski. Talk to me about that.
I don't think many have outside of the Chicago area. And I'm not sure how widespread this is throughout Illinois or if it's just a Chicago metro area thing. But he was a Polish military officer who helped train the colonials during the Revolutionary War. And I think because Chicago has such a strong Polish community, we celebrate his birthday or just his day. We used to get off school, so that was nice.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's like it's one of those things, at least. Now, I brought up a map for the population of your state, and for those who are maybe listening on the podcast, you'll have to come over to the YouTube in order to be able to take a look at this. But I'm going to circle around a couple of key areas. First off, though, do you know what the general population is of your state? The overall population?
The state overall is 10 to 12. I think about 12 million.
12 million. Okay. And obviously I'm looking at this area right around the water. I'm assuming that that's the entire Chicago and Chicago metro area.
Yes. Yeah, that's the Chicago metro area. And so, like I said, the state is 12 million. The Chicago metro area is like 9 million. So, very highly concentrated in Chicago. And as you might be able to imagine, that can sometimes cause a little bit of friction with the rest of the state. I think a lot of the state's laws and regulations are with Chicago in mind because that's where the majority of the population is. And I think further down south and out to the west of the state, that might rub them a little wrong, which I can understand.
I think New York has the same type of situation because I think Manhattan is something like close to somewhere between 6 and 8 million people just in that one little island area. And then everywhere else throughout the state, it gets pretty big. What about these areas that are pretty high in population? What's that up there?
Okay, so that's got to be Rockford. Rockford is, it's a couple hours northwest, obviously, as you can see, from Chicago, pretty close to the border of Wisconsin. And that's a small little, city in and of itself.
Okay. And then what's over in this area? There looks like there's a large concentration of population right.
Yeah, pretty sure that's Springfield. Or you know what? Now I'm second guessing myself. I don't think that is. I think that's the St. Louis area. I think that's East St. Louis.
Okay. Perfect.
So yeah, you got the overflow of the St. Louis metro area, and those guys there, the red that's in Illinois, are probably Cardinals fans, the traitors that they are.
Okay. Let's talk about the economy within your area. Now, there's a huge number. When I was doing the research on this, I saw a huge number of people that are employed not only through the National Guard, but also through different insurance companies like State Farm and Allstate. Abbott Laboratories has a huge number of people in your state. And then, of course, the University of Illinois out of Chicago, they employ a ton of people in your state. But apart from that, what are some other large organizations, whether they're organizations or companies within your state that are heavy employers?
Sure. Yeah. So major companies that you would have heard of that are here: Walgreens has their headquarters here. McDonald's has their headquarters here. Boeing is headquartered here, and then Caterpillar. So kind of as a nod to our agricultural roots and still our agricultural industry. Caterpillar is located in central Illinois.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, in terms of travel and transportation, um, it's really interesting because when I think about um, the different states that surround you, especially like Iowa, for example, I think of cornfields and rural community and stuff like that. But you have a very robust transportation sector within the state of Illinois. Talk to me a little
Yeah,
about, first off, how the roads are within your state. Are they well
sure.
maintained? Or is it pothole city? Like, what's the situation there when you travel?
That's a good question. I've got to give this answer from my own personal experience and not from statistics. So, and I should mention, Illinois, Iowa, Indiana are all pretty rural once you get away from the metro hub. So outside of Chicago, past the suburbs, I mean, it's similar. It's a very very rural, agriculture focused state. But the roads overall are pretty good. I think we do maintain our roads well. Don't at me, Chicagoans or Illinoisans if you disagree with me. In the city of Chicago, I don't think you'll find anything online that praises our roads. Statistically, if you compare them to other cities, they're probably fine. But we do love to complain about our potholes, and some will say that we have two seasons in Chicago: winter and construction.
That's how it goes
Yeah,
throughout most of
but
the states.
back to Chicago, we do pride ourselves. We've got one of the top public transportation systems in the world. And we've shared our how we've done it with other cities. Other developing countries have learned from us. So we do hang our hat on that. We've got a great L system. The L is the CTA, the Chicago Transit Authority train, and you can call it the subway, but it's called the L because most of it is elevated. L, you get it?
Got it.
It does go underground in some areas, but generally it's above ground, and that kind of spreads its fingers throughout the city. There are some areas that they call it the last mile problem. So the L might get them close to home, but then it's like that last mile or two in underserved communities has been something that the city's tried to address. Obviously, Uber and Lyft are big here, which has made that a little bit easier. The bus system is pretty good. That goes kind of horizontal and vertical throughout the city, where the L doesn't cover. And then the trains that go, the metro commuter rail will go out to the suburbs, out from the city.
Is that like a light rail system?
That's the full on train. I mean, they have freight that runs on the same rails. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Now you also have a couple of major airports that are like, I'm not talking just like little regional airports. I'm talking like international, huge airports.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your experiences with those places.
Sure. Yeah. O'Hare Airport is up on the very northwestern tip of Chicago. I mean, you take one step out of there and you're in. Well, now I'm blanking on what suburbs are right next to it, but Rosemont. Excuse me, Rosemont's
Okay.
like right next to O'Hare Airport. So anyway, very northwestern tip, but it was for a long time the busiest airport in the country, one of the busiest in the world. I think a couple airlines changed where their hub was, so we lost that title, which is fine because I would rather not have my airport be the busiest in the world. But yeah, it's a major one. International, flies everywhere, and then Midway on the southwest side is it's Chicagoans like that, especially because it's always where Southwest is flown out of, and everyone loves Southwest. They recently started flying out of O'Hare, but yeah, both are major international airports.
Excellent. Do you guys have a large port community? Is in terms of, I know you said you can go through like the Mississippi and stuff like that. I think through some river systems, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, so that I mentioned, the Illinois Michigan Canal, isn't active anymore. That was, I think it's a bit antiquated at this point. It was big in the development of Chicago, but so we do have the port, the lock system that goes from the Chicago River into the lake. And if you ever take a sunset cruise here, which I recommend you do if you visit, if you go on the river and then out into the lake or vice versa, you have to sit in the locks, which then gets you to the right level to go out on the lake. It's kind of a cool experience. But yeah.
Sounds neat. And then, of course, are there any major tourist attractions within your state? I mean, obviously, the whole state is probably a tourist attraction, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things in Chicago. But I mean, things like amusement parks and stuff for the kids, or major sporting venues, things like that.
Definitely. I mean, Chicago, you can't, Chicago obviously is an amazing city, and a lot of the things we talked about are major tourist hubs here. Outside of Chicago, there are great, beautiful national parks. Starved Rock State Park is only about like an hour and 40 minutes outside of Chicago with traffic. We used to go there camping all the time when I was a kid. It's beautiful. Yeah, there's a lot of great, stuff in the south of Illinois, around like Carbondale area. Beautiful geography there as well. In terms of amusement parks, Six Flags Great America is about an hour and a half north of Chicago. Great roller coasters, if that's your thing.
Awesome. Good to take the family to at least once in a lifetime. So
Yeah, exactly.
now, in terms of the government, you have, I think, I think it's primarily I think you were alluding to this in terms of because of the population, like a majority of the city. When you get towards Chicago, it tends to be a little bit more liberal because you have a
Yeah,
larger population. But then when you get out into the suburbs, it's a little bit more conservative, as is most with rural communities. Is that pretty
yeah,
much the state, both on state politics as well as federal? Would you agree
absolutely.
with that?
Illinois is always a blue state, in every election, every presidential election. Excuse me, it's always a blue state, and that's because of Chicago. I think not that there aren't Democrats and liberals outside of Chicago, but yeah, like any other state, as you get into the suburbs and then further out of the rural areas, it's obviously much more red. That can cause some friction, and again, like I said, understandably, most recently with COVID, the COVID restrictions that were being put into effect by Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot of Chicago. They were kind of partnering up on that. Well, the rest of the state said, hey, we exist too, and we're very different than Chicago, and these regulations don't apply to us. I think if you're in a town of a couple hundred people and your bars aren't allowed to open, that's different than Chicago. So yeah, again, sometimes that spills over and maybe isn't fair, but yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And then in terms of the natural resources, when I was doing the research on the state of Illinois, it seemed like coal and oil were really big.
Yeah.
Obviously, the lumber, you had made mention earlier about the agricultural within your area. Is there anything maybe I'm leaving out, or are those
No,
pretty
that's
much the
primarily
highlights?
so. Yeah, lumber is big, coal, petroleum, and yeah, I mean agriculture. Our soil is our biggest natural resource. We've got incredibly fertile soil.
Excellent. Then, in terms of education, you have some major colleges that are there.
Yeah,
Obviously, University of Illinois has been there since 1867. Illinois State has been there since 1857. Yeah, University of Chicago, I don't even know how long that's been there for, but it's been there quite some time too. But some
yeah,
other colleges that you might be aware of, like what are some of the big
definitely.
colleges that are out there?
Well, University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign's my alma mater. So got to give them a shout out. Illinois State's a great school. Their big, I think, claim to fame is education. They're a big education school. University of Chicago is a top-notch school. Great graduate programs. Northwestern University is the one that's not on there. Is again
Mm.
a top tier, school. It's known worldwide. I should list a bunch of others that would be offended if I didn't, but
Well,
I'm going to stop.
the one that keeps coming to mind, that's very different from these colleges here, is like the Art Institute of Chicago, and
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's been really big too. I mean, at
yeah,
least we hear it internationally.
my sister-in-law, future sister-in-law, went to University or Art Institute for her graduate degree. Yeah, that's again like a very well-known institution.
Excellent. And then in terms of safety and security, obviously when you're in major cities, you want to be mindful. You don't want to walk down that dark alley in the middle of the night, But in terms of major crimes, or foreign or domestic terrorism, are there any
Yeah.
major issues that in your research that you've done that you've found?
So if you kind of read some headlines about Chicago, it may seem like a violent city. We have had trouble with gang violence, with the murder rates. Chicago is a very safe city to visit. You shouldn't be afraid to visit it. I'm going to say this: this isn't a positive. This is something that the city needs to address. But Chicago is one of the most segregated major cities in the country, and the reason that comes into play here is that a lot of that gang violence is very isolated. So even when it's bad, it can be very isolated, and you can easily avoid areas that are dangerous. Generally speaking, don't. It is a major city. You need to be safe, but yeah, that is a challenge that is continually ongoing, and it could be another podcast digging into the causes of that and whatnot. But again, it is we have had issues with the violence, but it is isolated. A lot of that, and this shouldn't be something to be proud of, but a lot of that I watch on the news from my North Side apartment and say, oh, wow, I didn't know that was happening. So beyond that, let's see, foreign domestic terrorism threats, not really. I don't really know of anything major. I think, no more than any other Midwestern state.
Yeah, when I was doing my research, I couldn't find anything that was really outstanding in terms of terrorism that was shining there. Okay, let me do one last little thing with you really quick here.
Sure.
Think in terms of an elevator speech. Okay, let's say I have a ticket to Chicago. Okay, I have a round trip ticket to Chicago. I can do anything. Just sell me in 1 minute. Why would I want to go to Chicago? Why would I want to go to Illinois in general?
Yeah, definitely. Illinois is just the heartland of America. It's the land of Lincoln. Chicago is one of the most fascinating cultural hubs you can visit in the United States. You can go to a ball game. You can go to a world class comedy club. You can go to a world class symphony. All in one weekend. You can do it all here. It's an amazing city. It's beautiful. Come visit us. That wasn't the most poetic elevator pitch, but I think it's
well, yeah, you sold it to me. I mean, as I said, I've been there before and I love it. So, I mean, I would definitely go back. So appreciate that. One other thing really quick. Now you do something a little bit interesting in terms of your own employment. And I just want to call that out really quick, just because you've been so instrumental in helping me with this. Talk to me a little bit about what you do in connection with sports teams.
Sure. Yeah. So my company is called Rent Like a Champion. And that the name comes from the University of Notre Dame, where we were founded in Northwest Indiana, South Bend, Indiana. Their kind of team motto is play like a champion today. So Rent Like a Champion comes from that. Rentlikeachampion.com, you can check us out. We do housing and hospitality for college football games, other events that happen in college towns, and we partner with the PGA. So we are the official housing provider for a lot of PGA tournaments, which is fun. We've housed, you name a major golfer, we've housed them at a U.S. tournament. If you're going to a sporting event, check us out.
Fantastic. Dave, thank you so very much for taking the time.
I was going to slip one fun fact in. We were on Shark Tank back in 2015.
Were you really?
Yeah, we got an investment from Mark Cuban and the guest shark, Chris Sacco.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fun.
Well, again, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot today, and I hope my students did as well. So thank you so very much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. Now, to my students that are out there, if you have any questions or anything that comes up after this, please feel free to send me a question through an email at scott@theprofessortravel.com. If you're on YouTube right now and you want to be notified about when new videos pop up, click that bell icon right above us in order to be notified about that. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe. It doesn't cost anything, and it certainly does help the channel out. And if you like this content and you want to receive more of it, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that too. Finally, if you're on the podcast and you haven't already done so, please feel free to rate us, review us. We always appreciate that feedback. So until next time, my name is Scott. I am the Professor Travel and make every day a travel adventure. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.